Okay, I had done a demo on shading cylinders and cones, and I think a good way to start learning about shading, which includes these three topics: reflected light, core shadow, highlights, and pastel. Well, that was done in pastel. These are the three that are most common: reflected light, core shadow, highlights. Those are the characteristics that you'll see in cylinders and cones. And now we're going to do one in marker based on the pastel sketch. So we did the pastel sketch to see how reflected light was created. Once you add reflected light, it creates a core shadow, and then there's a little bit of a highlight on this side. Now, to make this a Rapid Viz sketch, is to study these three different topics: reflected light, core, highlight. This highlight is on this side of the center line. The core shadow, or core shade, is on this side of the center line. So I can make a generalization about that when I sketch. So in another demo, I had explained the use of markers dealing with drawing a cube. So a nice way to think of markers is if you start with one, like a 50% or a number 5, then you could skip every other color. That would be a 5. Then I can go to a 3, and then a 1. That would be all the odd ones. So here's a 3, and here's a 1. After 1 is the color of the paper. So I'm just going to put a little box here. I'm just going to write PP. That's paper. This is the range. I can go even further by doing a 7. But that will probably just be for outlining. So 5 through 1 and the color of the paper are good for a light color object. Maybe a white object or something very light colored. So let's draw a cylinder using those tones. And if you know you're going to do a marker sketch, you should start your sketch in marker. I have an underlay done in pencil, very rough. And so I know I'm going to be doing a marker. And I had mentioned in a previous video that when you work with marker, it could bleed. So expect the marker to bleed through. So you don't want to have a nice paper underneath. So let's do the sketch. I'm going to sketch with a 2 or a 3 so I can see the marker. This is a 2, and I'm going to use the thin side of this marker and start with an ellipse and draw the sides of the cylinder. This is the top part of my ellipse, so whatever shape that ellipse is, I'm going to draw a slightly bigger ellipse at the base. I want to make sure I curve that ellipse into the straight edges. Now, let's review this again. Here's the center line. This part of the center line I have a highlight, that part I have a core. So let's use that same idea. I'm going to lightly sketch in a center line here. So I'm going to imagine that I'm only doing this for demo purposes. You wouldn't really draw a center line on your marker sketch. And so halfway between the far edge and the center line, I'm going to have my core. So let's look at the color choices, the values. My core will be really dark. I'll go with a 5 and then work my way from there. So here's my 5. I'm going to sketch between the center line and the edge, and I'm just going to draw one line, just one line. That's my core. Okay, and then I'm going to blend. I'm going to blend from 5 to the color of the paper. So here's my 4. Here's my 3. And then my 2. And I'm just going to color this part. That's my basic tone. I'm going to give a little color on the top. And then my drawing will come together once I start outlining this. So let's outline it. Sometimes I like to use pencil. My straight edge here. black. Type this ellipse. There's a cone. There's a cylinder. And then I'm going to add a little parting line just to make it look a little more interesting. So here's my core. It's halfway between the center line, which I'll label CL, and this far edge. So halfway in between. Then on this side is my highlight.